All boaters must know this. Navigating the Intracoastal Waterway, ICW, isn't like coastal cruising. It's a different world entirely, filled with hidden dangers. Shockingly, over 60% of ICW groundings happen to experienced captains who miss one critical detail. Well-equipped captains run aground inside the marked channels after misjudging tide, and boats hit bridges in strong currents more often than you think. The ICW's unique system flips traditional navigation rules upside down. Miss it, and you risk damage, danger, or disaster. Learn these secrets before you set out on your journey, and stay with us to find out what happens if you're a global waterman. Let's start with what the Intracoastal Waterway actually is, because understanding this will save your bacon when you're out there. The ICW is America's 3,000-mile marine superhighway, stretching from Boston to Brownsville, Texas. Think of it as the interstate system for boats, a protected inland route that lets you cruise the entire eastern seaboard without battling open ocean conditions. But here's where it gets dangerous. The ICW isn't one continuous waterway, it's a complex maze of natural rivers, man-made canals, sounds, and bays all connected together. Each section has different depths, different current patterns, and most critically, different navigation rules that can trap the unprepared. The ICW was originally built for commercial shipping and military defense, but today it's the highway of choice for thousands of recreational boaters making the Great Loop or heading south for winter. The problem is, most boaters approach ICW navigation with coastal rules, and that's exactly where they get into trouble. Here's the first mind-bending fact about ICW navigation. Forget everything you know about red right returning when it comes to markers. The ICW uses a completely different system that follows what the Coast Guard calls conventional direction. Southbound on the Atlantic side, westbound on the Gulf side. This is your new North Star for navigation. Before we dive deeper into these game-changing navigation secrets, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Trust me, the information coming up could literally save your boat. And stick around, because in just a few minutes, I'm going to reveal the one Coast Guard secret that could get you out of a ticket, even when you think you're busted. Plus, the tidal mistake that cost one boater 48 hours stuck in Georgia, and how you can avoid it. Now let's talk about the ICW's unique marking system, because this trips up more experienced boaters than anything else. Remember coastal navigation, where red right returning is gospel? Well, the ICW laughs in the face of that rule. The ICW uses special yellow dayboards, squares and triangles that are your lifeline to safe passage. Here's the critical part that even some charter captains get wrong. When you're traveling south on the Atlantic ICW or west on the Gulf ICW, the conventional direction, you keep yellow triangular dayboards on your starboard side and yellow square dayboards on your port side. But here's where it gets tricky. When you're heading north or east, against conventional direction, everything flips. Yellow triangles go to port, squares go to starboard. Miss this and you're headed straight for shallow water. Why does this system exist? The Coast Guard needed a way to mark this massive waterway that made sense regardless of where you were coming from. Traditional harbor rules assume you're entering from sea, but the ICW connects hundreds of different entry points. The solution was to create a conventional direction and mark accordingly. You'll also encounter regular red and green channel markers within the ICW system. When you see both colors, remember the old saying, red and green, stay in between. This is your safe water, the deepest part of the channel where you want to be. But here's a pro tip that could save your prop. Just because you see safe water between red and green markers doesn't mean the water outside those markers is deep. The ICW has countless shoals and sandbars waiting to grab your keel. One moment you're cruising in 8 feet of water, the next you're stuck in 18 inches of mud. Let's talk about something most navigation courses never cover properly: understanding the different types of markers you'll encounter. Mile markers are your best friend for navigation planning and emergency communication. These show your exact progress along the ICW and are numbered starting from Norfolk, Virginia, heading south. When you're calling for help or fuel, these mile markers are how everyone locates you. Restriction signs are where many boaters get expensive tickets. These diamond-shaped signs with orange borders mark no-wake zones, manatee protection areas, bridge restrictions, and speed limits. In Florida waters, manatee zones are strictly enforced with fines that can hit thousands of dollars. One careless pass through a manatee zone at the wrong speed, and you're looking at a federal citation that'll ruin your whole season. Danger markers, usually diamond-shaped with orange borders, mark rocks, shoals, or other hazards. Here's what the textbooks don't tell you. Give these markers a much wider berth than you think you need. ICW channels shift with storms and tides. That rock marked last season might now have 3 friends keeping it company. Information markers provide crucial local intel like marina locations, fuel availability, and local regulations. These aren't just suggestions, they're often local laws with real enforcement. That no discharge zone marker isn't just environmental friendliness, it's federal law with federal penalties. The ICW isn't your private highway. You'll share it with commercial vessels, sailboats, fishing boats, kayakers, paddleboarders, and, unfortunately, jet skiers who think navigation rules don't apply to them. Understanding right-of-way could prevent a collision that ruins everyone's day. If this information is helping you become a better boater, show some love with a thumbs up and share this with your crew. Knowledge shared is accidents prevented. Now let's talk about something that makes many boaters nervous: Coast Guard encounters. Here's the reality: if you're cruising the ICW regularly, you will be stopped by the Coast Guard. It's not personal, it's not suspicious behavior, it's routine safety enforcement. The Coast Guard has absolute authority to board any vessel in US waters for safety inspections. This doesn't require probable cause or reasonable suspicion. It's their job, and they take it seriously. But here's the secret that could make your encounter smooth instead of stressful: preparation and attitude determine everything. What are they looking for? Valid vessel registration, proper safety equipment including current Coast Guard approved life jackets for everyone aboard, current flares, proper fire extinguishers, and sound signaling devices. They're also checking for operator sobriety and environmental compliance. Here's the pro move when you see those flashing blue lights: slow down immediately. Acknowledge their presence with a wave or radio call, and follow their instructions precisely. Have your documentation ready, remain calm and courteous, and answer questions honestly. Most Coast Guard interactions last 15 minutes or less when you're prepared and cooperative. But here's what they don't teach in boating safety courses. The Coast Guard also uses these stops for intelligence gathering about weather conditions, problem areas, and safety hazards. Be friendly and informative. Share what you've observed about channel conditions, weather patterns, or safety hazards. This cooperation often turns a formal inspection into a pleasant conversation with fellow mariners. The big mistake boaters make is getting defensive or argumentative. The Coast Guard isn't trying to ruin your day, they're trying to keep everyone safe. That professional, courteous attitude could be the difference between a warning and a citation when they find that expired flare you forgot about. Now let's dive into the topic that separates ICW amateurs from pros: understanding tides and currents. This isn't just about convenience, it's about safety and avoiding expensive groundings. Here's what catches most boaters off guard. ICW tides can be completely different from ocean tides just miles away. Some areas experience normal tidal ranges of 4 to 6 feet, while others might have minimal tide effect due to the waterway's configuration. Some sections are influenced by wind as much as astronomical tides. Tidal currents in the ICW can run 2 to 4 knots in some areas. That might not sound like much until you're trying to dock in a cross-current or navigate a narrow bridge opening with current pushing you sideways. I've seen experienced boaters get swept into bridge pilings because they underestimated current effect and interaction. Here's the planning secret that pros use. Always check tide tables and current predictions before departure, but more importantly, plan your trip to work with the currents, not against them. Fighting a 3-knot current can double your fuel consumption and turn an 8-hour day into a 12-hour ordeal. The real danger comes at low tide, when shoals and sandbars that are safely covered at high tide become boat-eating hazards. Many ICW areas have controlling depths of only 6 to 8 feet at mean low water. Know your boat's draft and add at least 2 feet for safety margin. River currents add another layer of complexity where the ICW follows natural waterways. Spring freshets and heavy rainfall can create currents that run counter to tidal flow. The result is confused seas, unusual current patterns, and navigation hazards that aren't on any chart. Here's something that blows most American boaters' minds when they venture into international waters. Our navigation system isn't universal. The marking system we use in US waters is specific to IALA Region B, and if you cruise internationally, you need to understand the differences or risk serious danger. IALA Region A, used in Europe, Africa, Asia, and Australia, follows the red port system. Red markers are kept on the port side when entering harbour from seaward. This is exactly opposite to our red right returning system. Why the difference? These systems developed independently in different parts of the world before international travel was common. When standardization was attempted, it was easier to create 2 compatible systems rather than force established maritime nations to completely overhaul their navigation infrastructure. IALA Region B includes North America, Central America, South America, and parts of Asia. This is our familiar red right returning system, where red markers stay on your starboard side when returning to port. If you're planning international cruising, this difference isn't academic, it's life and death. Using the wrong system in foreign waters can put you on the rocks in minutes. Always verify the local buoyage system before entering foreign waters, and when in doubt, consult local charts and harbour pilots. The ICW presents different challenges throughout the year that can catch unprepared boaters off guard. Winter navigation means reduced daylight hours, potential for fog and low visibility, and cold weather equipment challenges. Many marinas reduce services or close entirely in northern sections. Summer brings its own problems. Afternoon thunderstorms, especially in the southeast, heavy recreational traffic that can make popular anchorages look like parking lots, and hurricane season considerations that can shut down entire sections of the waterway. Spring and fall are peak migration times for snowbird boaters making their annual pilgrimage south or north. This means optimal weather conditions but maximum traffic congestion. Popular spots like Beaufort, North Carolina, or St. Augustine, Florida can be completely packed during peak migration times. Weather planning isn't just about comfort, it's about safety. ICW bridges operate on schedules, and missing your window due to weather can strand you for hours or even days in some locations. Always have alternate plans and safe harbor options identified before you need them. VHF radio protocols can save your life in the ICW. Channel 16 remains the universal emergency and hailing frequency, but Channel 13 is critical for bridge operations and commercial traffic coordination. Weather channels provide current conditions, but local knowledge from marinas and other boaters often provides better real-world information. Beyond Coast Guard requirements, smart ICW cruisers carry EPIRBs or PLBs for serious emergencies, waterproof cell phone cases, comprehensive first aid kits, emergency food and water, and backup navigation equipment. Electronics fail, screens break, and GPS signals can be blocked in some ICW sections. Now let's talk about something that intimidates many ICW newcomers, but becomes second nature with experience: bridge navigation. The ICW features over 160 bridges between Norfolk and Miami alone, and each one has its own personality, schedule, and clearance requirements. Fixed bridges are straightforward. They have specific clearance heights posted, and you either fit or you don't. But here's what catches people off guard: Posted clearances are usually at mean high water. During spring tides or storm surge, your actual clearance could be significantly less than advertised. Opening bridges are where things get interesting. Bascule bridges lift up, swing bridges rotate horizontally, and lift bridges rise vertically. Each type operates on specific schedules. Some open on demand during daylight hours, others only open at scheduled times like on the hour and half hour. Here's the protocol that separates pros from amateurs. Monitor VHF channel 16 and the bridge's working channel. Request openings politely and professionally. Bridge tenders are federal employees doing a job with specific safety protocols. Being rude or impatient won't speed things up and could actually delay your opening. Railroad bridges add another layer of complexity. These typically stay open for marine traffic except when trains are approaching. When a train is coming, that bridge is going down whether you're underneath it or not. Always confirm with the bridge tender that marine traffic is clear before approaching. Here's something that can turn a pleasant cruise into a stressful emergency: fuel planning. The ICW has varying distances between fuel stops, and some stretches will test your range and your nerves. The stretch through North Carolina's Outer Banks is particularly challenging, with limited services and changeable weather conditions. Always know your boat's fuel consumption rate at different speeds and sea conditions. ICW conditions can vary dramatically, from calm protected waters to choppy conditions with beam winds and currents. Your fuel burn in rough conditions could be 50% higher than in calm water. Smart ICW cruisers carry additional fuel containers when crossing long stretches between services. This isn't just about convenience, it's about safety. Running out of fuel in a remote ICW section with strong currents and limited cell coverage can quickly become a dangerous situation. Marina services vary dramatically along the ICW. Some full-service marinas offer everything from fuel and pump-out services to restaurants and rental cars. Others might be nothing more than a fuel dock with basic supplies. Research your stops ahead of time and have backup options identified. Pump-out services are critical in no-discharge zones, which cover much of the ICW. These services aren't always available when you need them, especially during busy weekend periods. Plan your holding tank management accordingly and never discharge illegally. The fines are substantial and the environmental impact is real. Nighttime ICW navigation is a different beast entirely, and it's not for inexperienced boaters. Limited visibility, complex channel markers, and busy commercial traffic create challenges that even experienced captains respect. The key to safe nighttime navigation is understanding the lighting systems. Green lights mark the left side of the channel when traveling in conventional direction. Red lights mark the right side. But here's what's crucial: not all ICW markers are lit, and some lights can be obscured by trees or structures until you're very close. Plan your nighttime runs carefully. Choose familiar sections with good lighting and minimal traffic. Avoid areas with numerous bridges, complex channel configurations, or heavy commercial traffic. Remember that your night vision is compromised by your boat's interior lighting. So dim all unnecessary lights and use red bulbs for chart reading to preserve night vision. If this video helped you become a safer, more confident boater, smash that like button, subscribe for more essential boating content, and drop a comment below about your ICW experiences or questions. What's your biggest ICW navigation concern? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, keep the shiny side up and the propeller in the water.